Okay. It's good that I am starting the record now with the person who's not here. Okay, can people see that? Yes, okay. Okay, well, I'll just comment briefly on this. And just in terms of what we were talking about, like one of the ideas with this project is that, like the idea of a field is that there's no necessary focal point, and the background is kind of as important as the foreground. I think Helen did a really beautiful job with this, and especially in terms of creating this mood, right, where you look at it, and because of not giving us all the details and all the information, it does become more atmospheric, just like to have these flowers floating. And a lot of people would find they couldn't do that because they have to, oh, it has to have a stem. But by leaving out information, it does create a more dreamlike quality. So nice work, Helen. Maybe you'll come later. And if people want to add more comments later, that's good as well. I mean, I feel I'm not giving people a chance to speak, but I wanted to have that opportunity of the written. So I hope everyone's okay with that. You don't feel like muffled or...
Helen just joined.
Oh,
Wendy.
Helen, you just
Sorry.
joined.
Sorry, I got delayed.
Okay, well, we were just talking about your work.
Oh,
So that was good timing.
I didn't know.
So I was just saying how I love how dream, like that you didn't include all the information. It really creates an interesting atmosphere. And also the strength of it is that the background is just as strong as the foreground almost. Like you're really looking, your eye is kind of going back and forth, and they really feel, the flowers really feel like they're placed somewhere. So do you want to talk a little bit about your process for this?
Well, honestly, when I'm painting, I'm mostly annoyed because it's not going for me, and I get really angry sometimes, and
goodness.
then I feel like throwing it out the window. And
oh my goodness, Helen, this is so beautiful. I mean,
so I tried sanding it, and the sandpaper went through all the paint, and I was down to the canvas.
Okay, so
and then I glazed it with Viridian kind of a mix. And then eventually, because I didn't have zinc white, I had to use titanium white, but very, very faint. Very, very little paint. It was mostly glazing liquid. And then I didn't like it at all after that. I thought it had all faded away and it was horrible. So I don't know.
Okay, well, that's not the facts. You tell ourselves stories which aren't true. This could be a story that's not, I think it's really beautiful, and I love the things that like I was talking earlier about. In this class, we're not just interested in making beautiful flower paintings. I mean, there's so many of them. You want to create a painting that has an atmosphere and a feeling, and this painting really does. And I think one of the strengths of it, if I'd show a close-up, everyone could see, can you see how like the flowers are really connected to the background? We don't feel like they're just stuck on. They're really part of the background, even though the colors are so different. Like, look at this red, it's kind of bleeding in. And I think that's in part from the sanding. So like is really good, because often like people will do a project like this and the flowers will really look like they're stuck on the green. But when people see them up close, you can see the connection, but you can also see it when you're looking at it. Like you just feel that the green background is part it's almost like a colored mist. So I think it's really successful. I mean, I think
Um,
the most successful response to this project, Helen.
well, it's just that it was so cheerful looking before I put the glazing on and the
Yeah,
sanding.
cheerful is overrated.
I see. Okay.
I mean, cheerful is okay, but that's not our human experience. Like
No.
it's like when you listen to a beautiful violin sonata, it might not be cheerful, but it's beautiful. So there's difference, right? Like there's
Oh,
there's a beauty to things being subdued, right?
oh, I know.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying.
I do. I
Like
do.
you
Yeah.
wouldn't want to be around someone who's cheerful all the time, would you?
Probably not.
That's what I mean. That's
Be
overrated.
pretty annoying, really.
Like, cheerful songs or cheerful poems, they're
Mm.
okay, but they're not the ones you remember.
No,
The
no,
ones
they're all in minor key. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So well done.
Oh, thank you very much. I think when you're on your own and you're not sure what you're doing, you do tend to get lost, though.
And then did you have a chance to read some of the comments people have wrote?
No, I've only just got in, you see.
Okay, so
I
you
had
can
to
do
go
that
out.
later.
Oh, and I'm glad it wasn't a complete disaster.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
well, thank you.
So I think also sometimes with art you need time. Like I would suggest you put it up somewhere, Helen.
Yeah,
Give
Yeah.
time to look at it.
yeah. Well, my family seem to like them now, so
That's good, but it's not always the truth.
no. I'm a bit suspicious of them sometimes, all right, but
So John, okay, thanks, Helen. And John, do you
right.
have 3? Or these are from before? No, I'm confused.
Myself now.
So John, are you here? Now you could unmute. I know John's here, but he might have gone. Does anyone see John? Oh, there. Okay, so I'll unmute you. Okay.
Okay, now
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yes. So did you do 3 or those are from?
I did 3. I tried several different things. And I did mostly wet on wet, and even for this one, I painted from the back to the front and let the colors diffuse through the paper.
Okay.
So
Okay, so I noticed someone made a comment that the paper was less wrinkled in this one. More. It is something to consider, John. I know you're using old paper, but sometimes the wrinkles are a distraction, and what some artists do is maybe make it more wrinkled and flatten it, or just to kind of think about it. But I
okay.
think the piece would be stronger if it was less wrinkled, like, you know, because it becomes a distraction. But there are artists who like to use what we call distress paper, and they might make it part of the work. So
Right.
it's something to think about. So I like how you're working in the background as well. That was a big part of the project.
Mhm.
I like how some of the greens and purples, like you don't know if they're part flower or part background. I almost would like to see more of that, like carry it through. I think
Okay.
I noticed like in this one, my first question is like, why isn't this continued here? Because
Okay.
did you have a reason, like Barb, like she just didn't
Yeah,
want?
I just left it. So and then I wanted to see what would happen because it was soaking wet. So I wanted to see what would happen when it dried. But I agree. I think it would be better to go out there with the color or even another color.
Yeah, I think if you did that, like like even a color that's maybe in between these two, it would maybe show up more because
Yeah.
their is kind of competing a bit.
Yeah.
But that said, I love what's happening with the blurring here. So, I mean, I think people can get more of a sense of it when we're up close. Like this is what, what we're talking about, the atmospheric, and also where the background and foreground, you can't tell the difference. And it's hard, sometimes it's hard for people to do that. Like I love this area in particular because there's a real kind of connection between the background and the foreground.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sometimes hard for people to do that because, they feel they have to make everything show. But you can see how by not revealing everything, it adds to the painting. That's really good. And I think with this one too, I would suggest if you could, like it's so beautifully painted, but I would suggest to maybe, like this is kind of dissolving, maybe dissolving some of the leaves a bit into the background.
Mm-hmm.
Like just to have an area of ambiguity like this.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
just in terms of the project and to make it like this is so beautifully painted, but there's a slight disconnect with these two signs. So if this
Right.
could somehow be carried in, do you see what I mean?
I do. Yeah, I'd like that. At one point, I even took put a painting over the top of this one that's so sharply defined and tried that out as an experiment too. But yeah, I see. I think this would be better if it was all quite diffused and dreamy all the way through.
This is so beautiful. Like this, if you did a whole painting like this too, like that's really that sense of like something like this where, like art, we know what it is and it's like that thing we want, but we can't reach.
Yes.
That's what I mean about like, it has more of a kind of a psychological impact. I mean, I know it's hard not to want to paint beautiful flowers, but to take it to that next level where you're getting into what I call like the atmosphere, the mood.
Yeah, I'd like the atmospherics of that very much. So I'll keep trying that. I think that'll be fun to do.
Yeah, and maybe even just bleed out some of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could.
Could do that, yeah. Okay, great.
Oh, thank you, Wendy. Appreciate it.
Great to see that you did 3. And then just one last thing, remember to bring it to the edge.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just one of my things. I always go to the corner and see what's going on there to see how attentive the artist is. Okay, well, thanks, John.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And then Kit. So look at Kit.
Wow.
It is a wow painting. So Kit, how was this for you? Out of your comfort. Do we have?
Here I am. So this was a chalk. I got some chalk for this one because of the technique of blurring that we were asked to do. I thought I'd try, it would lend itself to smearing a bunch. And yeah, so that's a little different for me to work with, but it became a piece about memory. I think the idea of blurring, the technique, became an obvious sort of, match with losing memory. And so it became a piece about memory and all the different ways you lose memory. So I think I became a little involved with the narrative of that, having known people with Alzheimer's, I kind of had a front row seat to that process. So there's the messiness of losing memory. There's the stuff that stays sharp and it's really Swiss cheesy. And so I started to have all of that when I was working on this piece. So it's maybe a little less atmospheric or abstract because it started to feel very specific and the flowers felt a bit figurative to me. And then in choosing to put the little blue in the corner that was commented on, I think that was attached to the narrative because it keeps it in space, right? It keeps it in landscape as opposed to more of a creative atmosphere, which is what I thought I was going to do. But I don't know, it just, I don't usually tend towards the hopeful in my messaging, but I thought, oh, it just kind of, every time I would cover it up and think about letting go of it, it just kind of wanted to stay there. So I left that bit. And, you know, a lot of sort of accidental figuration started happening as I was dismantling the flowers or blurring them. So that was quite good for me.
Well, I mean, I don't think other people see that much, right? Like, I don't think they see the figuration.
Mm.
You
Yeah,
know,
it could be personal, like, you know,
Yeah.
and nor do they have to. It's just sort
No.
of my own process with it.
it's interesting because
Yeah.
we all, the thing with abstracting it, we all bring our own. I would definitely say it's very atmospheric and, you know, like psychological. I mean, you get a feeling of something, like maybe a sense of distress, and it is curious about the blue, you know, like it's, I mean, one of the things I and we artists talk about, you know, one of the things that makes a good painting is the idea that it makes you ask a question. And I definitely, the blue makes me ask a question, and I would hesitate to say not to have it for that reason, because it's just, it is a bit of an anomaly and it's slightly disturbing, but it's almost as if like this is covering up the blue and that there's just this bit left. And, you know, I think it makes it a little more extraordinary to have the blue.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I think that worked out well. And it's a nice, like one of the things we're looking for here is that kind of tension between the background and the foreground. And I really think it's important for people to see how by not giving full information, it really draws the viewer in. Like we have a kind of psychological connection with this piece. And it does feel like it has kind of a darker melancholy, in part like the choice of colors, right? Like the colors are subdued. So even if we don't read your exact story, and I find the narrative really interesting because sometimes it's very helpful for people to have that kind of structure, like give order to what they're doing, like to think of a metaphor. So even if we don't know it, there's a kind, we sense something is going on. I mean, I don't know about others, but I feel like there, I do sense there's a kind of struggle, or, you know, it's not a, so that is really amazing to get that feeling across.
Awesome. I have to
Ca-
thank your comment to Mary Lou last week about the dark horizontal bar she put in the top left as disturbing the piece, and that was what gave me the I thought, okay, well, I'm going to leave it there, at least as that representative disturbance. So that's awesome.
Okay, now
Learn that in this class.
Can I ask a question of Kit?
Sure.
Yeah, Kit, I love working with chalk, and I'm curious how you smudged it, what you used to smudge it.
Fingers, all fingers, a little bit of Kleenex when it got too muddy.
Mm-hmm.
Simple. Yeah.
Yeah, I just love this.
So, okay, thanks, Barb. I only have one question about this corner.
Mm-hmm.
You see, I'm on to people about their corners because I want to make sure that they're considered.
Yeah. And I have an answer. Justifying the blue, it was sort of an as above, so below. That's happened a few places throughout the composition. And so to create the above atmosphere, I needed to break into the bottom as well in a more subtle way, but I was breaking from the layer of the ground to go even behind that, which is back to paper.
Okay.
So it was kind of a, above below type playing. It was on purpose. Whether it works or not, I don't know. But
well, my only consideration, and I think that I understand what you're saying, is that they almost like are symmetrical. So if you wanted to make the blue stand out a little more, you don't have to fill it in, but just put a lighter value. Because this is a really strong dark light contrast. It's just to give you something to think about. Because right now I look at the both, but if you just cover that corner in your mind, the blue becomes very, like, it's like, okay, now you're really taking a risk with the blue.
See how much stronger the blue is if you bring that up to full chalk. It makes it a lot stronger, and I think I was struggling with having that be such a standout.
Yeah, but I would say
sort of the horizon line between, or where the paper folds almost, going across, and what's above and what's below. I was sort of giving them a relationship. So the black and white flowers in the front are kind of, to me, speaking to the more recessed ones in the back. Now I'm just, saying how I play with thought while I'm working, but it's just
the thought. I just think it's such a daring thing that to make it more daring, but just give it consideration.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I appreciate how you've really thought about everything, and it is nice. Like, this is kind of an ambiguous. Is it a negative shape or is it a leaf shape? So, yeah, really great job. Well, thanks, Kit. It's been very exciting to see all these works, as I'm sure people felt when they're looking through the Dropbox. So Laura has a few. So Laura, do you want to talk a little bit about your process here?
Yeah, I think listening to the comments for so far, I'm thinking that I didn't really get the atmosphere. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I'm just listening, yeah.
Sorry, it's the first time I'm using a headset.
Okay.
So I don't know, I just kind of approached it more with paint, because as you know, most of my other pieces use a lot of collage. And I really enjoyed this part of it, like the very first part of it. But as it went on and on with the smooshing and the scraping off of paint, I got really kind of disturbed. I think I even said so, especially like the third photograph, where it was like all that color kind of went off to the sides. I really didn't like it then. So that's when I cut it out and placed it on another background. So that kind of gave it more of a graphic quality. And I really enjoyed that, because to me, it's sort of more architectural. But getting back to the original intent, I don't think I did that. After seeing Kit's, I actually did another one that was wet in wet, and I think that one is working better for me.
Okay, we don't have that one.
Well, I could show you. It's over there on that I didn't put it into the Dropbox.
Okay, well, maybe you could put it in so we could see it. Are you holding it up?
No, hold on.
Maybe dizzying for us.
I'm walking.
Well, the Dropbox might work better.
See. Yeah, Dropbox would be better.
Okay,
I'll put it in and we could look at it later.
That's nice that Kit inspired you. I mean, one of the things that is really effective about this is the, like, you know, the monochromatic. Because as soon as you shift to monochromatic, like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Luke Toymans, for example. He uses a lot of neutrals, but it's very kind of monochromatic. It already creates an atmosphere. But
Okay.
I would have to say, even though I know you are going to disagree with me strongly, I'm prepared. I have to say this is the strongest one because I feel
I
it's,
knew you would say that.
I'm sorry, but I have to say it because I just feel it feels like more emotional. It's not just the flowers or something else going on. And I like the ambiguity, and maybe because it does tie in more to the theme, but I feel it's going beyond the flowers. I mean, these are,
Yeah.
you know, this is beautiful. And I mean, I love the lively way you painted it. But this one, I know, like you were saying, it's disturbing. I think you said that word. But I think that's the strength of it because, you know, normally if you think of, like, they almost seem like, I don't know if they're in a, like there's this bouquet or something, a structure, maybe not, but they feel as if, you know, we're not expected to see flowers like this. You know,
No.
like we don't expect to have black. It's like you're probably familiar with some of Jim Dine's flowers,
Oh
right?
yeah, I love Jim Dine's work.
I feel like it's like Jim Dine. So you're going much like not so much like the decorative, but now it's like the emotional and atmospheric. So you knew I would like this one the best.
Well, I think Kit made a comment about it as well, as she couldn't understand why I didn't like this one. And I think maybe because it does refer back to the whole thing around flowers representing death, you know. And so maybe that's something that I psychologically don't want to face, you know. It's
Right.
Yeah.
But I would not dismiss this one. Because I think I find it like very expressive, and I also like the contrast of like you have. Look at that! I mean, isn't this beautiful? Oh, goodness?
Yeah.
But I like that, you know, you still have like some structure. So that to me, the tension between the structure and the more atmospheric is what makes it work. And I also find the way you've done this kind of vertical and horizontal, that's like a geometric structure contrasting with the organic is really a really great tension. So it's not only that because it's more.
I did it that way because of that video of Gerhard Richter,
Oh yeah,
dragging something across.
yeah.
So that's why I tried that.
Yeah, but this is interesting too because in my own work, whenever things don't work out, I cut it out and make it into something else. So, I mean, I think this could be developed more with some kind of background.
Yeah.
Even a solid or something, you know, like to contrast, like a more solid background.
Right.
I just think maybe white is too much of a contrast, but just something to think about. So what you've used pastels? Or?
This was mostly all gouache.
Okay.
Gouache and watercolor. Yeah.
I mean, one thing I would suggest, but I know it might not be an ideal suggestion, but because it's risky, but like to take just water and take some of the color and bring it out.
Yeah.
You know, like just use some of the color that's there and see what happens. That's just a thought, but your exploration with this.
Thank you.
And yeah, so put the other one in the box and then people could still comment.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, after seeing them like this, some people might have other things to say about works they've already commented on as well. Who knows?
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's great.
I'm with Wendy, Laura. That was my favorite one.
Okay. I'm sure we have a few, we can have a few votes, Laura, on that one. Thanks, Barb, for letting us know. Okay, so does Mary Lou? Now, Mary Lou, is she iPad?
Yeah, I'm here, Wendy. Thank you.
So how was this for you?
Uh, y- um, you know, I did this from a kind of putting together a bit of a photograph that I took of on my deck, and I did this standing up, and I did it all at once, and I did it really quickly, and I feel like I'm not done with it yet.
Okay, I don't know if that's true, but, and what are these? Are these pencil or pen?
Yeah, it's because I used watercolor and I use gouache and pan pastels, and that's a pencil crayon type of.
Okay,
This, you mean the markings, right?
Fine.
Yeah, that's from a pencil crayon set that I have.
okay.
And I enjoyed doing this a
Yeah.
lot.
I can see that. I mean, I love the consistency of the rhythm of the piece. And as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about the idea of all over pattern today. So that they're like we're going to be making a composition that doesn't necessarily have a focal point, but
Mhm.
and also you can tell this is for everyone to pay attention to. Like Mary Lou has really paid attention to the edges of her work. Can you see that? Like how, I mean, I know it seems like a small thing, but it's noticeable. I mean, if anyone has the opportunity to look at Monet's paintings, he always, and also Bonnard as well, they always kind of stop at the edge as if in recognition of that this is, I'm working on a rectangle. And for some reason, I really appreciate that. Like, I love this edge.
Mhm.
And I mean, I really love the energy of it. It looks quite frenetic. Like, I like
Mhm.
that it's, I mean, often you look at paintings of flowers and they're very peaceful. I like this, it looks very energized, almost like nervous energy.
Mhm. Well,
So,
I think part of that was standing up and just going for it, and you know, I think that was part of it, is the standing up and having everything and doing it as a one go.
right. Now, I'm not 100% sure if you needed
Mhm.
the pencil. I know I said
Oh,
that
okay.
to Barb, just because
Yes.
it's like, it's a different kind of energy.
Yeah.
Like this is, the brush marks is this really physical energy. I'm not too sure if you know the artist Joan Mitchell.
Oh, yes. Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can see like how this relates to her work in the sense it's very like the gesture lines. So like this
Mhm.
is a very bold movement, and the smaller
Mhm.
lines are kind of a bit of an afterthought, but just something to think about.
Right.
Um,
And you know, that's interesting you say that, Wendy, because I did put that on last. So
yeah,
it probably was that. But you know, maybe I'll play around with that in that piece and see, you know, where what I'll do with those lines.
yeah, I think it's good that they're not pen, because sometimes
No, they're not pen.
and I mean, I don't mean to be critical, but I just think what would happen, like I was saying to Barb, that the way this would kind of just blend into the background.
Right.
Like,
Okay.
I totally understand the desire to bring in the pencil. It's like you're trying to
Mhm.
bring back the form, right?
Yeah. And I do I do like you to tell me, you know, give me that kind of information. I love it, Wendy. That's great.
Okay. So there's something else. Let's say if you didn't, you thought, oh, if you wanted to work with the pencil, like you don't want to change it. What you can do, I would suggest, is to come back and bring
Hmm.
some paint in,
Yes.
some red, just follow some of the pencil lines.
Right.
That makes sense. You
Yeah.
know, just to, so you're almost taking away the pencil by adding more paint.
Right.
See how
Yes.
here, like it really kind of becomes diffused.
Yes.
So you
Yeah.
can do that with some small marks, just an idea.
Mhm.
So you're
Yep.
working back and forth, so the pencil isn't the last
Mhm.
thing, the paint is the last thing. And I think that would,
Right.
because right now you feel like the pencil is the last, but if you went back,
Right.
I think it
Yes.
would make it blend.
Okay. I'm not done yet, Wendy. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Appreciate it.
I love the energy.
Thank you.
Okay. And Michelle is, so Michelle, you're here, otherwise known as Crystal.
Yes, she's my alter ego.
Yes, I've got that. Hey, look at this one.
Mm.
It's beauty. So how was this for you, Crystal?
Michelle.
You, Michelle, see now I was so proud of myself for remembering.
Well, yes, you've done it all along, and now you've forgotten it last class.
You know.
Well, I've used I tried different things like the flowers at the top are like more like finger painting. Actually, I did a lot of that around, but I wanted those flowers to be in the background, and I tried sandpaper, and I put 2 extra coats of gesso on just in case. And, it wasn't doing what I wanted to do. So in the end, I tried to make the flowers as diffuse as I could with just painting it. And then day 2, I thought I did happen to have some of that, the white that you suggested.
Yeah.
Yes, and I hated it. I had it, and I was like so frustrated with it because it just wouldn't cover anything, and just got thrown back in the paint box, right?
Parent.
Yeah. So that's what I did. It made it more atmospheric.
Yes. Oh, I think it's beautiful. I mean, especially when you get the close up. I mean, look at that.
Mhm.
I think, I'm not too sure, like when people are looking at the work in the Dropbox, if you have the opportunity to do the close up, but like these flowers are so great. I love this. You can see, just it's got a kind of mist over it. It's a very beautiful piece
Mhm.
and
Oh,
not,
thank you. Sorry?
not overworked. Like it just has the right amount of touch, but I like looking in this area. Look at how beautiful this with all the different colors.
Yeah.
It looks like you did some layering.
Oh yeah, and I did some wiping off as well.
Yeah. Okay, that's,
I think I used all the different things. I really appreciate that.
yeah, I think this is definitely your strongest work. What do you think?
Yes, of everything that I've done. Yes, it is.
It feels like
And sorry?
it feels like you've taken everything you've learned, and it's very confident looking to me.
It was confident because I didn't maybe try as hard.
Okay, well that's the secret.
It is because and it was good because for me it was good because John is walking away.
Okay, mute him.
Yes, so I can't. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Oh, okay. There you are now. Oh, now of course I've forgotten what I was. Oh, I forget.
Well, you were saying how you felt confident doing this.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So that's right. I felt more confident because some of the things we've done, I got pretty tense around them, and so you had given permission. This is what was great. You'd given permission to just try this and try that and see what happens. So that's what I did. And in the end, I thought maybe I put too much of that white on, but
No, I think you've just enough. And I love this kind of dramatic gesture here, like these diagonals. And
yes,
little bit here. I mean, it just gives such a sense of movement. We can almost picture, you know, like a very hot, sultry August day where there's just a bit of a breeze. So
Mhm.
I think you've really done well in terms of the painting, but also capturing this atmosphere.
Yeah.
And
Well, this is 30 by 25, and I stood up to paint it. I stood to paint it. And so then everything gets looser when it's, for me, when it's bigger, and standing. I can't explain why standing for doing this kind of thing is just works really well for me.
Yeah, well, thank you for mentioning that. It's a really important point because people always think using a bigger surface is harder, but it's actually easier. It's much harder to paint small. And
Yeah.
when you stand up, we're going to be looking at the work of Alex Katz today, and he does something called arm painting. When he's painting flowers, he uses his whole arm. He stands up and uses his arm, and it becomes much fresher. And it's such an important point you make that, you know, once you stop trying so hard, that's when the painting starts working. It's a paradox, but you have to have experience to get that kind of confidence. So, and bravo for you for doing such a big piece. I know a lot of people are working much smaller, so I really appreciate this.
Yeah.
And
Well, I was in Coons a little while ago,
okay.
and everything's so inexpensive.
Oh.
So I grabbed that, and I was happy that I had it.
Yeah, canvas is so cheap these days. And just for everyone else, we just added Michelle's piece, so feel free to comment on it later. So thanks.
Right. Thank you, Wendy.
Great work.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure looking at everyone's work, I have to say. It's always a surprise. I put up the projects and I just don't know what's going to come back. Okay, so Penny. I just have to check the dates. Okay, nice. So
Yeah.
Penny, do you want to talk about this?
Sure. So what I tried were 3 different substrates for the same composition. This was painted on in layers, or actually in I did mono printing on Yupo paper on this. And then I also tried the same approach on tracing paper, and then also on tissue paper, and this was the most successful of them, and it was a lot of fun. So I would just do one color and then lay another sheet of Yupo paper on top of that, and then brayer this top surface, and then pull that off, and then add the next color, and just did that in a succession of colors. And it was a lot of fun because it forced me to let go of a lot of control. I had very little control over how this turned out. And then the last step was I took the white gouache pen and just tried to add a little bit of detail. And that was a struggle. I think I was noticing that Mary Lou and I think Barb also talked about how you wanted to define what was supposed to be indefinable. And so I had to really struggle with trying to over define this.
And so you didn't use a brush at all?
No. Well, just a brush to apply the paint, but I used a really large brush so that I couldn't do any sort of detail work at all. So, and it was very watered down wash, and it was the watercolor in a tube. So they were a little bit thicker, and I tried to make them more of a soupier consistency.
Okay. Well, I think adding the white is really key to that. It gives it kind of structure. And I've talked about this before, like sometimes adding a bit of detail really adds to the work. It gives it structure and contrast and scale. Like to me, without that, it's not going to be as strong. And so that was really good choice. And I like the really dramatic color you chose for the background, because that really plays with, you know, the background coming forward. My only suggestion would be and this this suggestion might take away from the whole, your whole philosophy, like working with this process. It would be to maybe come back with the paintbrush and see these shapes, have some solid blue shapes.
Mm.
See how you have the solid red?
Mm-hmm.
You might
Mm-hmm.
wonder why I'm giving such a specific suggestion. And the reason is that when I look at this, I know exactly what it is. It's like the monoprint texture,
Mm-hmm.
it's sticky. Whereas when I look at this, I'm not sure. Like, I love the combination. Like, I like to see that, but then I like to see the solid.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be a way if you can use your brush so it doesn't look contrived. But let's say you just took your brush and made a brush mark like that
Mm-hmm.
on the blue.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
see how, like, in this one, it's solid and then textured? So
Right.
the blue is maybe a little too consistent in how it is.
I
And
see. Yeah.
it just makes it, like, I love this here, this shift to, like, where you can see the texture to the solid.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's really great that the background is solid as well to make that contrast. But it's just, I feel the blue could be pushed in the same way the red and pink is. It doesn't.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because what I tried to do on the other ones was to define those blue shapes by outlining them. And then as I did that, I thought, well, that's going against the whole purpose of the project.
Yeah.
So I hadn't even considered making the interior shapes themselves be the defined portion. So I like that suggestion.
Yeah, and not make it too forced. Like, just take your brush and stamp down with it.
Mm-hmm.
To keep the sensibility of the piece, that it's very process oriented. So
Mm-hmm.
don't even, like, you could even close your eyes almost. Like, don't like, just put some of the blue salt, like, go into one area and just stamp down with a brush. Like, to keep kind of spontaneity. Whereas you're right, if you started drawing around it, it would be too forced, and it's against the sensibility of the piece. But it looks so alive. And I love that, like, I'll just go close. So even like when you look at these, they still feel very process oriented, because I could see that there's a kind of thickness to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they really work well. And also to use the bright white, it's perfect with these colors, right? And the other thing that's nice about the background is that it's not solid green. And even like that, I like the white at the top, right? So it's that unexpected, like what's going past that. So I think you did really well with this. Great.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Could I ask some questions of Penny?
Sure.
So Penny, you first of all, how did you get that texture in the blue and the pink?
So have you ever used Yupo paper?
I have.
Yeah. So you know how it doesn't go into the surface, everything sits on the surface.
Yeah.
And so I just had it, let's see, I don't know how I'd describe the consistency. Was almost like a soup. It wasn't real watery, but it was pretty watery, the watercolor and the gouache. So I just blobbed it on there and then put another piece of Yupo paper on top of that. And then I took my brayer and then just went across from left to right, and it did that smooshing. And I think that's what gave it that really interesting texture.
And then did you transfer it onto a different type of paper?
No, this is Yupo.
Yupo to Yupo.
Okay. So I did Yupo to Yupo. And like I said, I did try the same process on tracing paper, really thick tracing paper, and then also on tissue paper. But I think they were just too absorbent. That was the nice thing about the Yupo, is that it had enough resistance so that the paint was staying on the surface.
And did you add the black dots after?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. It's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. And that also is a gouache pen.
Yeah, I've never heard of
a gouache pen.
Oh, they're great. They're the brand that I use is Pasco, and it's a Japanese pen, and it comes in several different widths. And it's funny because even the extra fine is not really very fine. It's kind of a thick pin, but they're great. They come in all kinds of colors, and I got them on Amazon, and they're just a lot of fun to work with.
Sounds like that's something Laura would like.
Yeah.
Because she has a lot of drawing in her work. So,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
then if anyone, Yupo, it's just really a plastic paper. So it has no absorbent. Things just stay on the top.
Yeah.
Just to give a quick description for those people who don't know what it is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Penny. Okay, now Sheila. So Sheila, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, I really had fun with this, and I wish I actually had the atmospheric background that somebody said they really liked, because it's just shadow from the photograph.
Okay.
I took the same, I made an image of a rose on tracing paper, and then I copied it.
Oh, nice.
So that is the same rose, and then I painted it differently each time.
Okay. Yeah, I really appreciate that, because when we look at it, we're not too sure like what we're looking at. It's not like your typical painting of a rose. So I think that's really effective, and the way you've painted it differently. So there's this kind of sense that we're looking at the same rose, but we're not looking at it. So that's a great idea. We're not looking at the same one, those two things going on at the same time. And I think the green parts, I don't know the exact word for this part of the plant, but I like that contrast. What I would suggest is if you want to push it further, is just to work with a yellow background.
Mm.
So if you have like the yellow on yellow, right away it will be atmospheric. There's something about the monochromatic that really creates a mood. So if you put different kinds of yellow in the background so that the flower, I mean, it's fine as is, but if you wanted to push it to the project,
yeah,
that could be an interesting way to go. Because it almost seems like, there might be some yellow, but just with no plan other than making a background that has different yellows in it.
Yeah, I did cover it all with titanium white, but it.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering, because it does have a kind of like things feel, they're sort of blended together.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's nice. I
I was
guess,
wondering if it needed anything else, like a different shape added, or leaves, or.
well, another thing I would suggest, instead of doing the yellow background, is actually to cover some of the leaves, petals more with white.
Okay.
They almost disappear. That is kind of more
Right.
ambiguous.
Yeah.
See how this is light, like make it almost white.
Yeah.
Just take white and put yellow in it. I mean, it is like, I think it's that kind of thing is an act of bravery, because you're covering up something you've already painted. But like if you just make this yellow white, I mean, is this done with watercolor?
Acrylic.
Yeah, I would just.
On watercolor paper.
Yeah, I would just make some of the petals almost as white as the background, and it would really add a level of mystery.
Okay. Yeah.
So not white, but white with a bit of yellow in it. Is that something you might consider, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's 22 by 15.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't add anything else, because I really like the composition. Like, I like how it's almost one shape itself, but at the same time it's the separate. But it also, there's a famous painting by Duchamp called The Nude Going Down the Staircase. I don't know if you know that. It's a very famous painting. You could Google it after. But what it is he tried to show, like, it was a very stylized figure going down the staircase, but he showed her on every stair, like to create a sense of, so it's repeating the same figure.
Yeah.
So that has that feel to me.
Nice. It's interesting, because when I was working on this piece, I actually was working on it sideways, so horizontally
Okay,
with the central flower at the top of the work.
right.
And then when I photographed it to put it online, this is how it appeared, and I liked it way better.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I like it this way because the sense of movement, like it's, you really kind of feel gravity, and I don't know if you would feel that pull of gravity as much if it was horizontal.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, thanks, Sheila.
Thank you.
I hope everyone's ready for Susan's. Oh, I was looking, what about the other one you did, Susan? Oh, didn't you do one that had textures? Maybe I was just imagining that one. That's the first one I saw.
Yeah.
Great. So what made you think of doing this?
Well, watching all that Anselm Kiefer
Yeah.
work and seeing the variety of what he did, and that pile of hay or whatever it was stuck in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
he gave a lot of straw.
I've been looking at my attempt at gardening this spring and summer, and that was a pot of chives, and I've just watched them die. I sort of dared them to stay alive.
Okay. They're very delicate, those chives.
And I just really liked the color and the texture as they were, you know, losing their green.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then I clipped another plant that was getting in the way. But I did a lot of things with this.
I can see. So do you remember the High Line in New York, the
Yes.
I can't remember the name of the landscape gardener who did it, but he designed the plants. So he picked plants that would look really beautiful when they died.
Oh.
And so they wouldn't deadhead. They would just let them be like what you're saying about the chives, or, you know, let the sunflowers just be as they, like he keeps them up, and it's really quite beautiful. So all year round. So, I mean, I like looking at this and seeing like the dead and the alive in the same piece.
Yeah, there's also a dead leaf that I collected last fall that I just had around, and I thought it would, on the right-hand side.
Here.
There.
We can't see you, just so you know. It's fine, but just in case you want to be seen. So, well, this is really interesting, right? Like most people aren't expecting to see this. And on the one hand, you could look at it and think, oh, it's just such a mess. But there's such, I want people to notice that there's a real kind of structure to it. And pay attention, because we were talking a lot about edges. I want everyone to really pay attention to how Susan's dealt with the edges. Can you see how, you know, it's not, they've almost been taped off in some areas, and then some areas let free. But just to note that these strong edges really create a nice tension. They kind of hold in this wildness. And I mean, I think this, you know, talking about atmospheric, this piece is very atmospheric. It's like, you know, it feels like somewhat volatile, to use a strong word, but, you know, like we don't look at this and think, oh, everything's calm, I should just have a nice cup of tea. We look at it and think, well, what happened, right? Like we're really drawn in. So nice job.
Thank you.
How big is it?
It's just, it's, oh, I'm gonna block myself out.
Oh, yeah.
It's half of watercolor paper.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm impressed with your attachment of these items. It's not easy.
I tried.
I've done projects with this, but it's great. And there is, I think the fact that there's a minimal palette works really well. And then the green leaves kind of also give order, as well as all these sort of diagonals. So it's interesting how you could have like this idea of mathematics and mess in the same work. And then we have to ask ourselves, is this really done by the same artist? But definitely not on the same day, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But I had the ideas together. You know, I had one in my head while I was doing the other one. But
Okay. And so what do you think of how this turned out?
well, I really like the dreaminess of it.
Hmm.
There's a couple of things I don't like. And one of them is the outline of a flower in the lower, well, from my point of view, right there.
Yes, I know. You know how I know all, right? I'm just kidding, but I would suggest to, like, I think it does have real dreamy quality, but I would suggest to work on the background just a bit more and to like have the blue, like instead of this kind of really light color, have it a little darker blue, maybe somewhere where these green leaves are, like this kind of, where the color, like maybe some violet, so that like in this area, I think this is really strong, where the background and foreground are really kind of connected together. Because I think here, it doesn't feel as strong. Like I'd like to see the background as strong as the foreground.
Yeah, I didn't, oh, that's helpful because I didn't really know what to do with it. And I didn't want to get overly particular.
Yeah. But this is effective. So if you can kind of use this as the model.
Okay.
Does everyone know what I mean? Like, see how this kind of blends into the background. So that's what we want, that more ambiguity. Whereas here, this is definitely background. So this is more, but it could even be darker. Like, why not have the background darker in some places? Like here you have it, right? So just work on the background and it'll be very effective. So that's what I would suggest.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Well, I love the variety of the two works. Thanks, Susan. And you're doing art when you're not at your best. So that's always good to know that we must do art no matter what. Okay, thanks. And so now, Trish. Trish, this looks like it's framed. Oh, it is. Okay. So do you want to talk a little bit about it?
This was a rework. I had something else on it and jostled it over. And again, I was standing for this some of the time. Not for the center part, but for the background. And it was very loose and very flowing. And I didn't even think about it. Because if I did, I would have wanted to make it more detailed. So yeah, so it's so not me, and but it was fun and I enjoyed it, and it's making me stretch my boundaries and my limits and think outside the box. So, yeah.
Well, I think it is you. This is your detail.
Well, I did have to have some in it. I did do a little bit of zinc white over it, but I just couldn't fade it out anymore.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it turned out really interesting to have part of it faded out and then part detailed. It definitely shouldn't be in a black frame, just so you know.
No, this was a
Just
whole
temporary,
kit deal. Yeah, I can still paint the frame.
yeah, I want it to continue, like to be a light colored frame.
Okay.
Just as a general rule, the only time you use a black frame is for photographs, but
Okay. Good.
take my word for it. Probably someone could argue, but the thing I really appreciate about this is the contrast. So that to have like such extreme detail, so it becomes unreal. And that's what makes it interesting. I mean, I know like from some of your other work, you do have like a sense of the fantastical, and that's what I think comes across in here. So like, you know, it really draws us in because we see the flowers in the middle and they're so realistic, but the background is kind of magical and we don't know what it is. So it's very captivating for those reasons. So I mean, my only suggestion is the frame, which is really a non-issue, right? Because you could
Yeah.
change, but I mean, looking at it, I mean, I could suggest to blur out some of these flowers, except I think for this piece, the contrast really works well, just because it's so unusual. And it just makes me think, well, that's a really great idea, having part of the flower realistic and the other part not. And I think one of the really effectiveness of the bat flower is all the different colors, like each petal is its own color and own shape. And did you just make up this shape, or were you?
Yeah. There was a kind of maybe a pink peony kind of look, but I didn't try to even, make it look like a real flower.
Yeah, and I'd like to just draw people's attention to the way Trish handled the edges of the flowers. So you see some of the pink has gone in the background. I mean, the fancy term is color reciprocity for this, but it really makes it feel like it's connected to the background and not just stuck on. So that's really great. Nice job.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. I enjoyed it.
Good. And it is you, just a different part of yourself you haven't discovered yet. Okay, so, well, thanks everyone. And we'll see what we can get through today. There's always a lot to show you. I just really do a Ross Bleckner review, just a few of his images, and I want to contextualize it in terms of what we're doing this week, and then we'll look at Alex Katz. I happened to discover this new painting he just did, so I thought it's quite beautiful. And what I want to talk about is, for this project, I know it's related. I do make the projects somewhat related. And just make sure everyone's muted.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I don't know if John knows that his audio is on.
No,
so every time he moves in his chair or whatever, he comes on. Just in case he might want to. I
muted you, John. You're good. I've muted you. Okay. Okay, thanks, Michelle. So this is Ross Bleckner's most recent work. And so what this project is, and I just want to, one of the things I've been doing through the course is, you might have noticed or not, like overlapping some ideas so that you're kind of building information each week. So you'll see some similarities and differences between the projects. So what we're working on is this idea of not having a focal point. I mean, we do see a blue flower, but there's really no focal point, and it's what we would call an all-over pattern. the project we're doing is going to be much simpler, but I just want you to really think about this idea of the all over pattern. And I also showed you this was the idea of like how a more monochromatic palette, even though this is quite colorful, it ends up being quite evocative. And we looked at some of this work last week, but just I want to talk about like that connection to the background, and also really thinking about like the challenge of not having a focal point. And I know we looked at this, but I want to just briefly talk about how this came from the abstract expressionists, this idea of like, instead of trying to make painting a window of the world, the idea was to be true to the canvas. And Ross Bleckner often works with a square for that purpose. Like there's no foreground, middle ground, it's all one thing. And in art, we sometimes refer this to like as all over painting or field painting or democratic. So, I mean, if you look at this one again, there's no specific focal point, and then just kind of this kind of connection between the background and the foreground. So this is just a kind of review, but just see, I mean, this seems like a focal point, but it's tricky because this is just as important. So that's going to be our challenge. And this one too, like this is a close-up of his work. And the petal, the other thing I want to talk about today is how you want to have the background and foreground of equal importance. And so this might not be all over, but it still has that equal importance. And sometimes people even call it like a democratic composition. And this is his bird pieces. So it's just kind of all over. I mean, I guess you could think of it as wallpaper in that sense, but it was a kind of a revolutionary way to think about composition, believe it or not, because throughout history, there was always the sense of, you know, foreground, middle ground, and background. If you look closely at these, are little silhouettes of urns. He did this during the time he was making paintings about the AIDS crisis. And then he did a series of paintings, which we talked about in the video, or you saw in the video, with cells. But again, there's not really a focal point. I mean, you can see some things stand out more than others, but then he's put this kind of screen of circles. This one's called Heads and Hands, but again, it's just this democratic composition. And then I just wanted to include some history. So this, like Jackson Pollock was really one of the first people to really think about this idea that there's no hierarchy. It's all one thing. So, and this was in the 60s, and it was, I mean, it's old hat for us now, but it was quite revolutionary, that idea of this all over surface. And then the other thing, of course, he didn't use a brush, to really kind of energetic painting. We're not painting like this, but I just want to give a historical view of this all over. So this is Lee Krasner, Jackson Pollock's wife, and she was also doing this all over surface. And that's another one of hers. And then just this last one. So these were done in the 60s, but I think it's interesting, you know, to look at work now and people still using this kind of composition. So it's purposely all over. So that's just a kind of review of, when I say all over pattern, what that refers to. And so now, does everyone see Alex Katz? Someone could just put their thumbs up. You see that? Okay, so Alex Katz actually has painted mostly figures all his life, but he's also done these flower paintings. And one of the things that's sort of characteristic of Alex Katz flower paintings is the colored background, a kind of unusual color background. So he's not necessarily trying to make them look naturalistic in their space. But one of the things we'll talk about, or you know, you'll see for this project, is the idea of enclosed shapes. So we're going to be trying to make negative shapes with enclosed shapes. Obviously, we probably won't have time to get to it, but I'll just give you like a quick demo of what you're going to do for this. These paintings are really large, so you'll see in the video. So again, just like how he's really painting things to create enclosed shape. So much of it is the design. But the other thing you want to notice about his work is this is one brush mark. And he talks about himself being an arm painter, meaning, and I mentioned that earlier, like he'll just take his arm, like an arm painter means you use the whole length of your arm and you stand and he'll do that brush stroke, do a couple of brush strokes. So they're quite simple. And again, this blue background. So that's, you know, what we're talking about. And so these enclosed shapes. And so you can see, you look at these and you could recognize them as roses, but they're very stylized. And that's another focus for this week's project. And look at how he's cut them off here on purpose to create that interesting negative shape. So it's really about the background as much as it is about the foreground. This one's a little more painterly. It's a smaller piece done with gouache, but you can still see, like, using this bright green background and this kind of ambiguous area where, you know, is this background or foreground or middle ground? So this one is on a white paint, but you could still see that gesture. They're just like one brush strokes. So it's a kind of stylized flower for sure. But look at the background again, you know, these ideas of enclosed shapes. So it's, you know, and again, using the square, which really, as soon as you use a square composition, it really creates a more of a abstract look because we can't reference it to landscape as much. And here he's doing these roses, but as a portrait style. So you're not, again, we're not used to seeing that, but very stylized. There, we always recommend people don't sign their work in the front, but there you go. There's always exceptions. So they're quite different from some of the flower paintings we've been looking at in that, you know, he was influenced a lot by graphic design and sign painters. He was considered part of the pop movement in the 60s. So you can see this a little more stylized form than, you know, the painterly form. But what's surprising about them, and I think it comes across more in the videos we see, is that they're not as flat as they look. Like when you actually see these in person, you see the brush marks. In fact, when I saw a video of him describing himself as an arm painter, I was really surprised because I thought, well, these look so tight and solid, but there, you can see a lot of brush marks when you see them close. Well, not a lot, but like this would just be one brush mark. We'll have time to look at least a couple of videos so you can kind of see what I mean. So that's a close-up. So you can see they're not as perfect as they look. I mean, they're just right. But you can see that they're more brushy than you think. So just really, I mean, I love that flowers can be interpreted so many ways. I mean, I could actually do this course 36 weeks and cover all the different ways people are painting flowers. So this is, I just will end with his work, these more all over pattern pieces where the white plays a really important part. And you could see how he's purposely had these brush marks that don't connect to anything. And that's to really draw the foreground forward. So it's quite an important part. Again, just kind of seeing that these white So it's a bit unusual. I mean, they look realistic and yet they're really playful.
Wendy, does he do any collage? Is any of this collage?
No, none of it is collage, but that's so funny you brought that up because I have a work that he did when he was first starting painting that is collage. So he does do collage sketches, like to get ideas, and that's what we're going to do. I mean, look at this one. It's like a cherry tree. It's so amazing, I think, the way the blue and the pink, it all gets merged into one. So it's, you know, it's quite abstract, but no, this one you could see the brushiness a little more. Very kind of loose, leaving the white. Just, they're so well designed. This is a little earlier. And then this is his wife. Anyone who knows Alex Katz's work, he's painted his wife many, many times. So, but this is her with flowers, so I thought I would add her. This is a collage. Let's see. Yeah, so that would be a collage, and then you would make a painting of it. So so that's what we're going to do. This is one of his older works that was done in the 60s, but you could already see by cutting out the flowers in shapes, it already creates stylize. And I think that's what you were noticing, Susan, that the stylization of the flowers make it feel like it is collage. And then just quickly look at some of Andy Warhol's flowers. And I'm just putting them in here because you have to kind of picture that Alex Katz was doing his flowers at the same time as Andy Warhol. And I'm really interested in the fact that in art, nothing happens on its own. There's things, people are being influenced by other artists. So Andy Warhol made these one day because he said, I heard people like to buy paintings of flowers. And he had been doing a lot of darker work of like car crashes and things. But he really pushed these. And you know, like taking, I mean, what's fascinating is taking this one composition and just doing it over and over in different ways. I mean, these are silk screens, but really kind of this idea of the similarity and difference. This was a design for the top of an arena, I think in Tacoma. So anyways, that's why I included that. So again, he started combining the flowers to create different compositions. And so when you see Andy Warhol's flowers in museums, you sometimes see them one or you see them in a row. And in fact, the Oak Bay Hotel has a series of these in their lobby. So you can see them in Victoria. Winchester owns some as well. So it really changes, right, when you see them as a group. Just, oh yeah, so just always interested in how capitalism can absorb anything. These are makeup, eye makeup with Andy Warhol flowers. I just put that in for amusement. And that's, you can get a kind of sense of the scale. And then again, using the square as a way of abstraction. So the flower in the middle is a Jeff Koons sculpture, whose was also, like, he's a contemporary artist and was influenced by popular culture. So interesting to put these two artists together. So he made these crazy ceramics. I mean, some of you might know what these are playing off of. Like, they used to have these ceramic roses that people would have. I don't know if anyone remembers those, but so he's doing kind of pop art version of them. These are all ceramic, Jeff Koons. So it's really over the top. I mean, you have to see them to believe how extreme this is. So the ceramic. I mean, that's what makes them a little out of the ordinary. Jeff Koons likes to take things that are slightly kitschy and then makes art from it. So, you know, you can imagine like fake flowers, for example, slightly kitschy. So he's using that as his subject matter. And this is also his work. I know this is really different and maybe not what you're used to seeing, but he made inflatable flowers for a while with mirrors. And then these balloon flowers, but these are actually, this is actually acrylic resin, but he used the balloon idea as the mold. So they're hard, even though they look like they're balloons. And there's his tulips. I mean, this is what artists do. They like to push an idea to the extreme. And people who might know of Jeff Koons, they could understand that this is what he does. This is another flower fountain. So it's designed of those balloon flowers. And then I just wanted to end with his giant puppy, all made of flowers. It's just called Puppy. I think it's 24 feet high or something.
Are
Maybe.
these real flowers or?
Yeah, they're real flowers and they get replaced when they die. So
I actually got to see that
oh, cool.
in Bilbao.
Oh, wow.
It's
What
just-
was it like to see it?
Oh, it was fabulous.
It's
Just fabulous. Yeah.
It's so over the top that you got to love it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't walk by it. And so I thought we'll end with that. So what I'd like to do is just show one video and then give you a demo. And this, like, you know, this is just for your own interest. Like if you want to do a final project, it's totally up to you. But it's hard, like, to end the class without a project, if you know what I mean. It seems unethical. So the idea, like the no focal point, whoops. I don't want to share this. Sorry. Okay. What I want to share is the blog. Okay, so on the blog, does everyone see the blog? Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so there's a few different videos, but I just want to play this one. It's only 2 minutes, just so you can see him painting. So this painting he did as a homage to Monet's lily pad. So I thought that was interesting. And then there's a longer interview. And I also have videos. This is, I don't know if I showed you this guy yet. He's a German guy. Did I show you him? He has like how to paint like Matisse, or anyways, he said he has a video on how to paint flowers like Alex Katz. And normally I wouldn't put like these kind of videos, but it's actually pretty good because he comes at it from a European approach. So I think you might enjoy he actually goes step by step how to make a painting like Alex Katz, but it's good. It's not like some of these ones you might see on YouTube. So let's just look at this short one.
In New York, in Queens, where I grew up.
Just going to the beginning.
In New York, in Queens, where I grew up, if I pulled out an easel, all the neighbors would say, "There's that crazy Katz kid again." You know, I was like, you know, to most of the people, it's totally nuts. I like doing it, you know. It's very interesting. You never know what's going to happen when you start on the canvas. I love the adventure. And I love sticking it to people who didn't think I was anything for so many years. I love billboards. Yeah, I just love them. They have that, there's a kind of a idiot optimism in billboards, which I like. And I like the bluntness and the bigness of them, you know?
So just notice how he's painting the background first. Well, he's working on both at the same time, but the background. Isn't the scale crazy? Look at those brushes.
And not high natural talent. You have to really want it. As far as I'm concerned, if you want it, you have to go for it. And it's well, I spent 10 years carving frames 3 days a week, living in places without heat. So that meant I really wanted it. You know, I wanted it. I paint 7 days a week. I don't paint 6 hours a day. Some days I might make a little sketch, and other days I might draw, and then some days I paint a large painting. If I do one sketch a day that takes 20 minutes, that might be my day's work.
I like that.
When I started out, I went to Cooper Union. I went to nothing. At the end of the thing, I was a professional. You know, I said, if I can go that far in 3 years, if I have 20 years on the planet, maybe I can compete with Cezanne or something. I started off painting outdoors a lot. I went away from big compositions mostly and started painting very large landscapes. There's a hockey player, Hull, who's asked, how did it feel when you lost a step? And he said, in my head, I'm 19. You know? And yeah, that's the way I feel most of the time. I feel like I'm 30, 40 years younger than I am. And I think I'm doing stuff as good as I've done.
So I encourage you to watch the other videos. He's a really fascinating artist, and you might even find yourself going down the Alex Katz video rabbit hole, because he's just interesting. I mean, this video, let me just see when it is made. So 2015. He's still actively painting and showing, and he's 96. So he's a really great inspiration. So what I thought, we'll just kind of go over the idea for the project. So my idea with this project is that it would be quite simple, where you're not trying to make things realistic. You're working more like with solid shapes, the way Alex Katz worked. Now, his works aren't all that big, and I don't expect you to do that big, but I thought it's really, you wouldn't expect to see him working on that scale. So what I'm going to suggest is that you, like if you have colored paper, like just to work on a sheet, because that's a little bit different than anything we've done so far, is to just take like a piece of, colored paper, and then I have some pre-cut shapes, but you can just cut shapes of flowers. I mean, I just cut some tulip, and I was saying you could change the colors, like usually the flowers would be color and the leaves would be green, but here I have like yellow leaves. But you can also, if you want to make a more complex flower, you could also like just draw something with a pencil, just a flower shape, and then cut it out, and then just use the back side, or you can do it freehand. But so the goal of this exercise is to move these shapes around to create enclosed shapes, because you're really trying to make an interesting background. So can you see how that is an enclosed shape? And I might have flowers that, like I have this tulip shape that's a little smaller, but here now I've created these really interesting shapes. I mean, this is how Alex Katz designs his work, is he does sketches and he creates these shapes. So it's a different approach, and collage is really the best way to work on it. Like this shape is very close to the background. So an enclosed shape might be something like just here, like, can you see, it might be like this shape using the background, but it is a different way to think about things. I have that flower shape. So I might put my flower shape here, right to the edge, so I get this enclosed shape here. And then the other thing you'll notice with Alex Katz is he sometimes purposely leaves a little space, because that creates an intention. So there's the enclosed space, but you can also, you know, play around with that. If you have a shape like this way, it almost becomes a line, but then I can create an enclosed. And the flowers could be, you know, like I have one upside down. So you just kind of play. This is an example of an enclosed shape. Like everything doesn't have to be touching, but so now I've created that. So you just kind of think about that with your composition. I'm just using, you know, rough construction paper. I have another. I just choose the tulip shape because it's something I used to draw a lot when I was a kid. But so you can have them overlap as well. But just what you're doing is you're looking at, so I'm moving that around and I think, oh, that's a really interesting shape. And how interesting it is to have like this part of it go under the leaf part over. I wouldn't be able to make these design decisions without using collage. So this is, and we talked about this at the first class. So we're kind of going back to some of the things we did. You might see a similarity to this in the class where I got you with the Beatrice Mahese, where I got you to cut out petal shapes. And it has similarity to the first one where you made a collage maquette. So part of my idea is to kind of go back to some of the things, but I would suggest then you make a painting of this, but really try and make the painting flat. I mean, you could see some brush marks, but don't try and like delineate everything. Just, I mean, or you can do like what Alex Katz did with the roses, like maybe make a couple of lines, but keep it really simple. So that's like last week's project was really complex, right? With the, with all the layering, but this week could be simple. And I would just glue these down with glue stick. Yeah, and when I draw on them, I just turn that so I don't see the drawing. So, and I do have like step-by-step instructions, but one thing you'll notice is that there's no real focal point. In fact, this might start being the focal point, like I had it like that. So then I just, and then, so your eye is kind of going all over the place, right? It's easier if the shapes are all the same size, not to have a focal point. I added a few small ones, but just so you know, if you want to keep them more similar in size, it's easier. But there's still ways of not making things, like by putting this smaller one way in the corner, it's not going to be the focal point. So we're really kind of thinking all over. And if you really want to push the abstraction more, I recommend you try and do this on a square and kind of turn it around, because the square really emphasizes the design, and it, like I mentioned, it takes it away from being landscape or portrait. So that's the homework. Now that I've done all that, does anyone think that they want to try it? How could you say no to me? Okay, wave your hand if you want to try it.
Absolutely.
Oh, good. Okay, so if you could have it in the Dropbox by August 31st, it gives you a bit of time. I mean, you might do it sooner, but just, and then I'll comment on it. So that's great. I love seeing everyone's work. Thank you so much for, you know, putting yourself up to these challenges.
Thank you, Wendy.
You're welcome. Okay, so perhaps we'll see. I'm doing a landscape class, similar style in September, in that we look at 3 or 4 artists every week and you pick one of them. Gives you a little more choice. But anyways, if you want to continue with this kind of style. Penny?
Is that an online or is that a seated class?
It's online.
Oh, okay, good.
In the evening.
All right, thank you.
It's in the evening.
Okay.
A lot of people work, but it's Thursday evenings from I don't know, 6 to 9.
That'd be late.
It feels late, but it's worth it.
What? It would be
Yeah.
11. It would be 11 for
Oh,
me.
that's true.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. I'll take a look at that.
Yeah.
Well, to sign up, would it be recorded?
Yes, all our online courses are recorded.
Okay.
So
Good.
that way, if you fall asleep towards the end. So our courses are some of them are online and some are in class, but you might also notice that we're also doing workshops online. And while I have a captive audience, I'm also going to do a drop-in drawing online.
Oh.
6 to 8:30. No, 6 to 7:30, just 90 minutes. Each week a different project. So you just sign up. It's $15 a session. You just sign up for every session. And I give a brief description of what the session is going to be. So I thought it'd be nice for people who necessarily, because it's 3 hours. Someone's saying that. Let's just see who's being linked. Someone needs to mute. Maybe Mary Lou there. Okay. Yeah. Let us see if he's not muted. Kit, you have 2 identities right now. You know that? Okay, well, I'll just finish. It is. I don't have the option anymore.
Wendy, how do we find out more about the drawing?
Okay, so there's a website. It's called Draw by Drawing, and I'll put it in the newsletter. It's not going to start in September.
Okay.
Well, I was just mentioning, we also have like 2-hour workshops on Sundays online. And all our courses are 3 hours. These are 2 hours. I mean, personally, I found the 2 hours too short because I felt I really rushed through. Like, it'd be nice to have more time to like do the demo. And so just to let you know. So I'm saying all this so that I hope to see some of you in the fall. Okay, well, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Wendy. We'll see you for sure in the fall.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you,
I'll
Wendy.
see you in the fall.
Okay.
Thanks, Wendy.
Ditto.
Great. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, Wendy. It was fabulous.
Oh, thank you. It's
Thank
great.
you so much.
Susan, take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thanks, Wendy. It's meant a lot.
Good. It's good to see you. I thought I'll stay to the end and say bye to everyone.
Okay.
Nice
Say
talking
goodbye.
to you. Bye, Michelle. Bye, Mary Lou.
Bye, Wendy. I'll see you soon.
Okay. Good. I sympathize with you and the pain factor. Not easy.
No.
So, but we must go on.
Well, you said to me maybe a decade ago, art can save your life.
Oh, yes. True.
I'm really thriving with that idea.
Oh, good. I'm glad you took me at my word. Okay. Well, it's fun
Take
having a class. We need a voice of darkness sometimes. Not that you're that voice, but
Usually I am, actually.
sometimes I feel too dark myself. So.
Okay, see you.
Did you like when I said happiness is overrated?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, see you soon. Okay, bye.